All right. And we'll call the meeting of the Canby Public Library Advisory Board to order.
We have these screens on. Let's see. Oh,
Could I have a motion for the minutes? Who's read the minutes?
most of the minutes.
Yes, I motion that we approve the minutes as they are written.
I second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the minutes as written. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? The minutes are approved. Since there's no public, so there's no public comment today. The council liaison report, Paul? You have wise words for us?
I don't think you have anything really specifically about the library board rating. You had a good goal-setting session. I don't even remember if that was before or after our last meeting. I think it was after, right?
It was after.
Right,
Yeah.
okay. Where so came in and provided some good feedback and to the council. We'll see how those come out.
I haven't either, we're supposed to see it, I
Pretty
think,
soon.
we're supposed to see it Thursday, but what came out of that goal setting retreat is the fact that, certain council members asked that I do a work session on library district funding issues, which is awesome. So I don't know when that's gonna be, they'll let you guys know, but they're gonna have a lot of information all at once.
That's great. Under the board, the board chairman has no report. However, Christie's here to talk about civic engagement.
Yeah, so this last meeting did not happen. We were supposed to meet on Thursday of last week, and we had snow. So I'll just do kind of a quick recap, and I totally forgot to send you all the slides, but at the initial meeting, we had heard from 3 different folks from the city. So we listened to the HR organizer. He talked a little bit about his job, kind of what his role is, like, you know, in the grand scheme of things. We also heard from Eileen, who was the city manager. That was really interesting to kind of hear, you know, how she interacts with like city council, kind of all the different folks. I do, dang it. I do have a kind of a chart where it shows kind of the configuration of folks in the city and who oversees who. I mean, it's a very narrow pyramid at the top, right? So there's like the city council and the mayor, and then there's Eileen, and then there's a bunch of folks underneath that. But I will write myself a note to send that if you're interested in seeing what that looks like. It's in Eileen's slides. But that was interesting. I think that for me, just personally, I haven't ever had any real interaction with a city administrator, especially here in town. They've been kind of spotty. So it was kind of nice to get a little bit of maybe a more personal side to her. I see her sometimes at city council meetings, but that's, you know, obviously very brief. But so that was really interesting. I think I said this last time, but kind of my questions were like, you know, who oversees what and how does that interaction look? And so it was just kind of interesting to see who talks to who and how that works. And then we also heard from the city recorder, which was really, really interesting because she does a lot, way more than I understood, right? Like I see her again at like the city council meetings and like, I'm like, oh, she's taking notes. But she gave a little bit of background and like, I mean, when people ask for records, or like she keeps extensive files on like the history of Canby. So if you have any questions, she's definitely a good contact to kind of go back through and look through some of that archive material. So that was really interesting. And then we also got to hear from city council members that were at the meeting, and then the mayor was there for a little while as well, and just kind of talked a little bit about kind of their understanding of their role and how they work together to try to keep everything moving, smoothly. This next meeting that we ended up missing, that I think we'll just pick up where we left off, is going to be, I think, around like, was it like utilities and like some of the things I know nothing about, and just kind of how everybody works together to keep the city moving. So far it was just kind of a very it started out kind of a larger view of like who works where and the different moving parts, and then it sounds like we're going to get a little bit more siloed into specific functions of each of the different departments and how they work together. So it's super interesting. I was really encouraged by the number of people that were there. And then just how many folks were new. There were a lot of people that were new to Canby and wanted to kind of start off understanding where we're at and kind of the way that things have run. So that was interesting. And then there was also a couple of folks that they live here for like 70 years. So it was like kind of a mixed bag.
Yeah.
And then they had food, which is always a good thing to have when you're trying to gather community together. So it was really helpful. And I think that's kind of a small snapshot.
And how long does this go on, the schedule? Do you have an idea?
So it was scheduled for 6 months because it's just once a month. So I imagine they might just scoot it out a little bit to, since we missed this last month or this current month. But I think it's really a great idea to attend, because it's not a huge time commitment. I mean, I get that like everybody's time is already really stretched, but it's not like multiple weeks during the month. It's just once a month on a Thursday, and I think it's from like 6 to 8 or 6 to 8:30.
No homework or projects involved, or is there anything?
There hasn't been yet, no. I mean, I think you can choose your own adventure. Like if you have more that you'd like to know or follow up, everybody was super willing to have more in-depth conversations. But so far, it's been homework free.
Good.
It's interesting because Canby's kind of unique in a lot of ways. I mean, we have our own utilities,
Yeah,
which turns out to be very lucky.
yeah.
Certain times of the winter,
Sure.
and things like that. That's pretty interesting. It's interesting to know how it works.
Yeah, absolutely. I find it to be fascinating.
If only we knew how the federal government worked.
Yeah, that's different.
Any other board members who have reports or wish to make comments? Amy?
Well,
LDAC?
I got an email about the current state of the LDAC, but
Did you turn your microphone on? Yeah, thank you.
so I got an email from the LDAC committee, and honestly, I was a little confused by it, and I meant to come in early and talk to you, but
It's so fun to talk about this. So let's see, the Library District Advisory Committee have essentially been going in circles for the past, I don't even know how many years, just years. And one of the things that they had all agreed upon and basically started the process of trying to figure out some of the funding issues and whatnot with the library district, they decided to do that at the end of 2019 and have started coming up with a plan to meet, have work sessions, talk about it, and what to do. Then COVID happened, everything shut down, and now it's just back to this. So basically, and this is going to sound ridiculous, because it kind of is, basically, the county commissioners have agreed to have a different district task force, a small district task force of some sort, to go over what LDAC has been going in circles, which has a lot to do with funding and capital projects, a bunch of stuff that's stated in the IGA of 2008. So basically, what they want to do, or what they agreed to, the county commissioners agreed to, is there is going to be 10 people on this task force, with no more than one representative from each city. So if, for example, and it's gonna be composed of 2 mayors, 2 city administrators, 2 library directors, and then 2 citizens, which I think are gonna be library advisory board members. So if the Canby mayor, for example, is on that task force, I can't be on it, no other Canby people. Because Mayor Hudson has been here very long, they do want him as one of the mayors, but they haven't decided on that yet. I'm also the co-chair for the directors group right now, so they also want me on it, so I don't know what's gonna happen there. But really, basically that task force is gonna have 6 months to go over all of the issues and whatnot that LDAC has been kind of going in circles about, and then make recommendations. This is actually what the purpose of LDAC is, but because they're just going in circles, they're now creating a different task force, and it's just a whole mess. So basically that email was saying, hey LDAC, we're gonna create a new task force to talk about all of the issues that you guys have been running in circles about, and then we'll report our findings, and something will happen from there. So that's really all I know right now. They've been talking about this task force for quite a while, but it sounds like they're to the point where they're finally gathering the names, and hopefully we'll be able to move forward. And really what it comes down to is a lot of the reasons why things have been going in circles is because you have a lot of old members on LDAC who have been there for a very long time and really just want to rehash this. And then you've got a lot of new members who want to move forward and start working on getting more money for all the libraries. So I don't know what's going to come from this task force. I don't even know when people are going to find out about it. I don't know how that's going to run. It's really up to the county right now to combine all of those people and try to come up with.
Is it a replacement for the group that, okay, so it's like a sidebar?
Yes, it's basically
Okay.
like, here's LDAC, and we've got this other task force that's gonna try to take all the stuff that LDAC has been fighting about and try to say, okay, here's what we came up with, here's what we think we can do to move forward, and then LDAC.
Okay.
So the task force itself will have no power.
Correct.
There's nothing stopping about that. We just don't about what the task force.
Yes.
So they're going to take over the fighting?
No.
They're purposely not including, I don't think they're including any actual LDAC members, so something goes wrong. I don't actually know, this is all just a guessing game, but it's good that something is happening. It's good that the county commissioners did agree at their policy session meeting a couple weeks ago, and I watched it. They did agree that the libraries don't have enough funding. To actually hear them say that out loud is huge.
Good.
So they agreed to that. This task force is kind of the next step to figure out what the next step is. So even though it sounds confusing and weird and like we're going in circles, which we are, this is good.
The report you're getting ready to do because of your retreat, or is that, what was that you were saying?
The city council goal setting? Yeah. Oh, the work session, yeah, on the library.
Is that the same topic?
Yes, that would be specific to Candy though.
Right.
Yeah. But when I do that work session, I would love all of you to be there if you can be, whoever can be, because not only am I going to be explaining what the library district is, what the history is, where, you know, where it came from, all that good stuff, a lot of things that people don't actually know about how our libraries get funded. I start with that, and then I talk about all of the issues that we're all having, and then I'll get Candy specifically, but you have to remember too, a lot of the issues that I talk about with Candy specifically are everywhere. I'm just gonna talk specifically about ours, but it will be a really good meeting, and I think a lot of people need to hear all the information about it.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people do not understand what a library district is, how it's funded. It's not confusing once you really wrap your mind around all the different things at play, factors at play, but it is a unique system. And honestly, we are very lucky to be a part of the library district
Yeah.
because a lot of the cuts coming won't affect us directly. There are some cuts coming that will affect us directly, but because we're not like completely. So anyway, a lot of the issues that I talk about in that work session with city council are likely gonna be a lot of the issues that this task force is talking about, that LDAC has been talking about, and so on and so forth. The one thing that we tried to get everyone to agree to in that meeting that we went to last year in May or June was we said, we know you guys are talking about this. This is not doing anything. Can we all agree that we all need more funding and start putting our resources towards maybe a new tax district? And everyone agreed and then went back to do this.
Yeah,
So the task force was the answer to it.
yeah.
For now.
Do we know when the work session is going to be? Do we have a date?
I don't know, but I'll let you guys know as soon as I know. I think right now we're coming up on a really busy period because budget season kicks
Yeah.
off on Thursday. So hopefully we can fit it somewhere in there. If we can't, then I'll figure it out.
Yeah.
But it'll be a really good session to come to, and honestly, I would like as many people there as possible so they really understand what running the library involves and how much it costs.
Rich, as far as the task force, did the county commissioners give any direction or deliverables or anything? Did they give any meat to this whole thing, or was it just out there to let the task force set up all the rules themselves or priorities or whatever? Is there anything that,
So
that
all
you
of
could?
that, all of that's already been done.
Okay.
Basically, there was an agenda that was agreed upon by all the libraries and the county commissioners. There's an agenda agreed upon. They're only gonna be talking about 3 specific things, 3 specific issues, which are all things that you guys have all heard. It has a lot to do with the budget. And then at the end of 6 months, which they said they're hoping they can get it done in 6 months because it depends on schedules. They're hoping to have a report that will then go to LDAC and anyone else who's interested in next steps. So I really don't know what's gonna happen. I was told that I had to put some names up, so I obviously gave our library advisory board chair Lois. I said Mayor Hodson would be happy to do it, I'm sure. And I told him about that after I told him that. And then I said, I'd be happy to do it too, but the county commissioners would be one who's actually.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
And now it's time for your bi-monthly report.
And then I do also have Linnea's report too.
Oh,
So
okay.
Let me do mine and then I'll get hers.
Okay.
I'm meeting with her tomorrow, by the way, so if you guys have any questions about what she says. But here's my report. I received word that we received we're gonna be receiving 1 grant last week, and I got another email today that we're receiving another one. So the first one is that signature grant we got last year, we got it again this year. But we cut it from 20 hours a week to 10 hours a week, literally because library staff could not handle 20 hours a week, because you have to be with a teen intern like 30% of the time. It's just awesome. So 10 hours a week for 11 weeks, that'll be this summer, very excited about that. And then we also applied for a grant called Mini Grants for Rural Libraries. And we submitted a slate of 6 programs around building personal and community resilience. So we're gonna be doing 6 events. One is gonna be a conversation on fast fashion, waste, and thrifting. 2 is on sewing and visible mending. 3 will be on gardening. 4 will be on native bees. 5 will be on canning, drying herbs, and freeze drying. And then 6 will be a conversation on raising animals, farming, farm management, fishing. And then we can get some books related to all those themes, but the actual theme for the grant was like the people and the public. And it said, interpret that however you want. And we said, how about this, building personal and community resilience? And we ended up getting it. This was one of a few we applied for at that same time period, and we were like, this was the one we were the most excited about. So that's gonna be happening this summer.
Congratulations.
Farming for that last one?
Yes.
Is it kind of focus towards like versions of that, or really more kind of, because
We were trying to focus on like Canby specifically, so I think we're gonna try to get what would make the most sense in Canby, those kinds of presenters to talk to or about, but.
So if you have them in town, like what you can do, you can't do.
Right, yes.
Well,
How
community,
to sustain yourself,
Yeah.
how to sustain your family, your community, that kind of thing. So if you're really excited.
we have some community gardens too.
Yes.
I mean, they're,
That was the thing, is eventually I was like, we could do this event and that
Yeah.
event and this one, and then we
Yeah.
realized we had to cut it down a little bit. So hopefully this will just be the beginning of even more events around these kinds of things, so very excited about it. Community reads, I know I've said this a million times, but we are gonna be starting to give the books out on March 1st. We're also gonna be giving out tiny art kits to anyone who is interested, because we're gonna be doing a tiny art show around the themes of the book and the book in April. We'll be doing that Candy Beer Library Trivia Night, which we're currently planning, and we went to a little tester trivia a couple weeks ago, which was really fun. And then we will still be doing the Q&A with the author first, but very excited. So there's that. A couple other things. Sophia, our library assistant too, her last day with us was last week. She ended up getting a full-time job at the Washington County Corrections Prison Library. It was a dream of hers. So actually, she wasn't able to be here for the last few days because of the snow, but we already miss her and we're sad, so we'll be hiring someone in her position pretty soon here. Doing a library open house on May 1st still. That is first Thursday in May. That will be from 5 to 7. We'll do something similar to what we did last year. We're also going to be doing half off fines that day. And then we're going to be doing half off fines from National Library Week as well, which is the second week of April, the 6th to the 12th. And then just last thing that I kind of already said, budget kickoff is this Thursday. There's a lot to think about with budget this year, especially thinking about the fact that a lot of the federal grant funding is going to affect libraries in general, and will indirectly affect us a lot at least this next year. So I'm working on the budget with my staff right now, trying to figure out what we need, what we can ask for, and we are going to ask for pages again, library pages again, but not super confident that will be a great too, because I know there's some other staffing that may be a little bit more help. We'll see. Any questions about any of that? Okay. And here's Linnea's. I'm just gonna read it word for word. The first week of February was forecasting week, so all the freshmen, sophomores, and juniors chose out classes for next year. The incoming ninth graders will forecast in April or May. I'm planning on meeting with the librarian, Mrs. Tanini, next week to talk about any ideas she has. Finals for second trimester are in about 5 weeks. 3 during the meeting on 2/18, which is why she's not here. An idea that I have related to this is advertising that the Canby Library is a great place to study. You could include the study rooms and how to book them, access to computers and Wi-Fi, and anything else that people think of. And like I said, me, Linnea, and a couple other library staffers are meeting tomorrow, just to catch her up on everything we talked about today and then to talk about some more ideas. If you have anything you'd like me to share with her, let me know. But she's doing well, she just had something else going on today.
okay,
And that's that.
that's a great idea,
Yeah.
because small groups who actually are studying, not fiddling around, that would be a great use of some of those rooms.
Yes, exactly.
I don't have a friends report. The bookstore's still there.
Yeah.
It's working just fine. However, we did talk last meeting about looking at the duties and powers of the Library Advisory Board and think about how that fit in and how that might be changed. And I just have some preliminary thoughts, and maybe some of the rest of you have some too, but one of the things I found in this packet is that there's a huge variety in the way councils that work underneath the city council, these citizens boards operate. There's a huge difference. And so, for instance, we have commissions such as Urban Renewal, which is impounded enabled to make decisions, I believe. My understanding from reading their stuff. The Budget Commission, and the Heritage Commission, which interestingly enough is kind of an ad hoc make our own decisions with, if I'm incorrect, Paul, yell at me, or speak nicely to me, but.
I know that they still bring things to the city council,
Yeah,
but kind of put that decision.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
But they do get grants, so they work with other, they kind of work sometimes with third parties.
yes, yeah, yeah, I think so. I got that impression reading about it. And then even when you leave there are advisory boards that have two duties or powers, and some that, like us, who have 15, most of which I thought a good editor would have cut to almost nothing. It occurred to me that one of the problems we'd had is distinguishing between an advisory board and a board that makes recommendations, or a board that actually is empowered to make decisions. That we really are an advisory board. We're not empowered to make decisions. We're empowered to do a lot of talking and make recommendations. And so it seemed to me maybe the word responsibilities would be better used than duties and powers, which, and even in the other library boards around the county, there's such a huge difference. So one of the things I thought would be useful for perhaps all of us to take a look at is to look at that list of duties and powers, and keeping in mind that perhaps they're just responsibilities, so that things like being informed about current trends in library services and administrations might certainly be a responsibility of anybody who's on this board. Studying the needs for the library in this city, what the city needs the library to do, and pointing out which things they are doing and which things we are not doing, might be one of those responsibilities. That, yeah.
That seems more like Marissa's job.
Yes. Developing long-range plans for library service and facilities really is not our job, as far as I can see. I think we don't want to work Marissa out of a job. So in any case, I think this list could be, we could sit down and, in my mind, if any group that has more than about 5 or 6 responsibilities or things that are their core ideas, they're biting off more than they're ever going to chew.
But I was on the Transit Advisory
Yeah.
Committee for a couple of years, and working with Todd and with the advisory committee. We were pretty active in being providing feedback and going through like the transportation plans.
Yeah.
And even some of us were even helped out with doing RFPs for the contract,
Yeah.
and so forth. And he would always say, you know, the advisory committee, while we don't have the ability to make decisions, we have the ability to bring anything to the city council.
Sure.
You know, if we wanted to, if we felt like a route going one way was not being used as much, we wanted to go another way, and so forth. I think that was, those were the type of things that we were, advising on to say, like, hey, we think the community, they should, go this way. We weren't, well, the bus should run from 4 p.m. to 5 p.m. instead of 3 p.m. to 6 a.m. Those, not those type of things per se, like operational side, but, kind of like, the city council, more of the policy, that kind of, the direction of those things. And then he's like, give us any advice you want. And
Sure.
I will take it to the city council.
Sure.
And present to them, what the advisory committee thinks that we should do. And then now you advise, and now you kind of put that onus on
Yeah.
the city council and say, okay, well, yeah, we think that, that makes sense. You should, we should go and look at that. So, you do have a voice of say, but you're putting that information together and then presenting it into whereas take to city council and say, hey, advisory committee thinks we should kind of go this direction. We agree with this too. But you have to kind of be involved in the planning part of that in order to advise on that. So it's like we were pretty involved in the plans, going through, and we saw budget. I mean, we spent a lot of time on the budget because we knew, this is how much, STIF money we got from Salem and how much federal money we got for this, and it costs this much to keep running routes to Woodburn and so forth. And, so we have to advise them, well, maybe the money can be spent better over here, and they, say that you have this many riders going here, this many riders going there, maybe we should spend, maybe it doesn't make sense to spend that money. So we're pretty involved in those type of decisions.
And I think that's one of the pieces that's missing in this, is there isn't much of a sense of who we're advising. If the point of the advisory board is to be a sounding board for Marissa, and to work through problems that she's having with her to help her in that way, that's one thing. That's a different thing than being an advisory board that goes to the city. At the city council, at that point, the advisory board, once Melissa believed that what we were presenting was the right thing, I think certainly could go to the city council, and has in the past, and said, this is what we think should happen and change. I think that's the job of an advisory board. It's one of the jobs. And it's one of the things that's wrong with this, is that it's so general as to be almost non-existent. And I think that's one of the confusions here, is who the advisory board advises.
Yeah.
I've always looked at it as the transit committee.
Yeah.
We worked in tandem, worked together.
Yeah.
With Todd and Heidi and so forth. They would provide information. They would provide us the information, and then we have questions like, well, why would we do this instead of this? This how we do this. Oh, well, that makes sense. And there were some times where, different people think we would be a little bit split. Like, well, we shouldn't be going over here, and their reps like, no, yeah, we should. And some people were like, well, I don't think so, but still vote, right? You still have that. That's the whole point of the committee. You're still voting on things. And Todd would be like, okay, this is really what you want. I'll go ahead and take it up to them. But he would give you all the information and say, well, here's the pros and cons, of your decision. On the operational side as well.
Yeah.
So, for instance, you could take something like that, third line then, and instead of saying developing long-range plans for library service, you could say something like supporting, support library director as they develop, in their development of long-term plans.
Yeah, that would certainly
Because
be clearer, wouldn't it?
Yeah, because I mean, we aren't doing that, but we are sort of supporting that, providing input on it. But,
And there's a level at which I suspect Melissa would believe that she doesn't want us advising her. I mean, she has a large staff of personnel. She if I were in her shoes, I would not wish to have anybody giving me advice as to how I handled my staff.
Yeah, that's the operational side, and we can.
That's right,
we
yeah.
can get involved in the operational side, but the policy side of the direction, you know,
Yes,
interacting with the community.
Yeah.
You know, that's where you guys have otherwise, why be here?
yeah,
So,
yeah, my thought exactly.
But it's important, I think, to also ask those operational questions,
Mhm.
because once I am able to educate anyone on how things actually work, like, let's say you came to me and said, hey, I wanna reopen Sundays, let's make it happen. And then I'd say, okay, so this is what's involved. It's gonna cost this much money, we're gonna need this much staff, we need to think about facilities and tech stuff and I don't know, just a million other things. Like, it's helpful for me even if you guys ask me those operational questions, because once you have that information, then you can pass it along to people who talk about library stuff or ask questions. Because
Yep.
honestly, I think the biggest disconnect between sometimes what a community wants and what a library is able to do is a lack of information on what it takes to actually do that one thing that they think is just super easy to do. So even though, yeah, you guys are not supposed to get in the middle of operations, I will always educate you, and if you have really good questions and really good ideas, I can totally, you know, build those into our operations.
And there are different times in the life of a library when different kinds of advice are necessary too. When we were building this building, people on the library, on the advisory board were really deeply into it. You know, there were a lot of things that had to be decided, and a lot of things that it would have been inappropriate for one person to try to decide, frankly. And not that Irene wouldn't have made great choices, she would, but I'm sure, but at the same, she was just one person, you know, and so that's a whole different time. That's a whole different time. In any case, I don't want to make this go on forever, but what I hope will happen is maybe everybody will, I know y'all got that packet. Everybody take a look at, you know, look at what is on this one page and look through to the other stuff as much as you wish. There's a huge variety. Even one library, I think it's the Estacada Library, that library board is empowered to make decisions about various things, very specific things that the library board has to approve. So in any case, to look at this, to come back maybe with 3 or 4 or 5 things, responsibilities that you think, or a different word than responsibilities, that's just me, so that we can have something that's a little clearer for the people who come after us. And that having said, does anyone have any further business? I have the delight of announcing that we can leave early.
Do you want me to go over the meeting stuff first?
Yes. Yes,
It's not gonna take very long.
take as long as you want.
Lois did ask me just to review some of this information.
Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot. I didn't
It
have it.
won't take very long, and I can get as in-depth or not as you want, but I gave you a little handout, it says collection, maintenance, and selection, so that's basically weeding. And I'll go over some of this and then give you some other information too, but item D, selection or weeding is a fundamental element of collection maintenance. It is also stated in our library policy. Librarians make data-driven decisions based on standard library practice, which helps produce residual bias collection work. It's important to remember that we're not a historic repository or an archive. We cannot keep everything, nor would we even try. On average, our library, just Candy, adds about 7,400 items per year, give or take a couple hundred because of the increase in costs. And the total collection size is usually about 57,000 items, based on our building's physical space and dimensions and then the population that we serve. On average, about 15% of our collection is currently library users. At the time that I had originally created this, which was a year or two ago, it was about 9,000 items. Right now, it's a little bit more than that. But, and I've said this before, so if I've already said this to you, I apologize. Roughly the size of our adult nonfiction collection, that's about how many items are gone at any given time. So when you see empty space on the shelves or the bottom shelves not being taken, that's to shift when all those items come back. Because there's certain seasons where everything is out, it feels like, and checked out, and other seasons where everything comes back all at the same time, and we have to keep it all. So a couple things here to keep in mind. The goal is to maintain a patron-driven, demand-driven, popular materials collection for the candy community. So when I say patron-driven, I mean candy patron-driven. I don't just mean Lincoln in general. A lot of the decisions that we make as far as our collection goes is either based on what our patrons want and what they're asking for, and or holes in collections around. So you'll notice that sometimes we all have the same, new books, and other times one library will have a copy of this book, but no other libraries will have that. That's how a consortium is meant to work. We don't want to all have the same books. We want to fill each other's gaps, so we can provide a very robust, many different libraries collection. So it's not like just, one link collection. It's really a bunch of different libraries collections, and we all just happen to share them. That's a consortium. And being a part of the consortium, we leverage the power of those other libraries, which is very important. Our Friends of the Library group sells a lot of our deselected items as they receive donations as well. And this form of recycling of materials does bring money back into the library. I've had a few people ask me, I just saw a brand new copy of the Lucky Day copy of The Women in the Friends bookstore. Why are you selling it already? That's because the demand went down. So we did actually get, however many checkouts that we needed to get for those books to be of solid use. And then we have to sell them because, like I said, we do not have the physical space to put 10 of the same book
That's right.
on the shelves. Doesn't mean we don't do that sometimes, but we try not to. And then I've had a lot of questions of people in the past asking, how do you choose what kinds of items to get rid of? So there's a couple different things that we do, but one of the main standards that a lot of libraries in this country follow is called the CREW method. And so mnemonic that a lot of libraries use is musty. So we try to weed items that are misleading or factually inaccurate, which does happen here and there. We try to get rid of ugly, worn beyond mending or rebinding materials. So items that are yellowed or maybe have really old tags on them or have markings in them or just don't look very good anymore. Sometimes even if they smell. Superseded, so if there's a new edition or a much better book on the subject, sometimes we'll keep both, other times we'll get rid of the older one and keep the new one. Trivial, of no discernible literary or scientific merit. This does not happen very often, but every once in a while we get a book and it's on the shelf, and then we hear from the publisher that they found out that everything in the book was a lie.
Yes.
So they will ask us to actually discard the book themselves. That happened actually, I think, a year and a half, maybe 2 years ago, with a book that was supposed to be nonfiction, and I'm not 100% sure, but I believe they were going to put it out as fiction. Which that also happened with, what was that, Oprah book that she had recommended, A Million Little Pieces?
Yeah,
Was one of, yeah.
yeah.
A
There've been
lot of that book was true, but some of it wasn't, so. And then elsewhere, materials easily obtainable from another library. We've had really ratty copies of certain books, and when I see every other library has a copy, then we're like, great. But in general, we try to weed a lot of the material that is old, that is damaged, that is inaccurate, that has whatever kinds of issues. maybe books that we already have a bunch of other better books on the topic. There's a bunch of different reasons why we meet. But it's important to do that. We cannot keep every book on the shelf as much as we would like to. Trust me, it's hard to get rid of some books sometimes. But that's one of the benefits of having the bookstore, the Friends Bookstore in our library, is the fact that a lot of those books will go on to need a second life. They'll get, more people to read them that way. But if books are damaged and really gross and nasty, we do have to get rid of them. And I'll tell you something too. We have a couple different staff members that go through library returns and they contact patrons for snag items. And snag items are items that we receive that are either missing a part, so think no DVD in a DVD case,
Yeah.
or broken binding, or ripped pages, or somebody colored in the book. That does happen a lot, liquid damage. If it's kind of damage that, it's just normal wear and tear on the book, we do not charge people for that. If it is a loose binding, we don't charge people for that. It's really items that people are actually like damaging themselves, maybe not on purpose, or not accident, that we will contact patrons about. I've had a lot of questions recently because we've had quite a few snacks come in with liquid damage, and that could be water, coffee, juice, whatever in the world it is. Even if you see, I don't have an example here, but if you have like the top of a book and it looks like there's a little bit of water or liquid damage and the pages start kind of curling or warping a little bit, we don't keep those. That is dangerous. That is how mold grows in the books. That is how mold spreads to other library books. It's why things start smelling. So obviously, if there's a book that's been checked out 50 times and it comes back with that liquid damage, we might not charge the patron. If you're the first checkout on a book and it has liquid damage, we are going to charge you. Because if we don't do that, then that book just gets erased from the system and then we end up not having that book. And it has been happening a lot more lately, and some people have been very irritated by the fact that we've said we either need to pay for this or give us a replacement copy. But it doesn't matter how little the liquid damage is, it will ruin other books around it. So we're pretty strict with that, especially with space and whatnot. So yeah, do you guys have any questions about deselection or anything? A very important part of the collection development process, so we can fit other items on the shelves.
Do you want to hear how the Friends do the weeding?
Sure.
Because this is the story of a book. So when the books come to us from the library and from people who give us books, somebody like me, who looks like me, and the other one looks like Tiffany, comes in. There's somebody here every day of the week and empties the books out of the bin where people have dropped them off. We take them into the back room, we sort them. The books that are saleable, that are fairly clean, in fairly decent shape, and are not textbooks. There are some things like that you can't put in. Those things, the things that are dirty and torn and in unsaleable condition, get taken out when nobody is looking and put in the garbage cans. And most of the people who work in the Friends Library, in the Friends Bookstore, just really hate that part of the job.
I made Gail do it.
You made Gail do it, yeah. I got a note from Gail today about that. But books that we have more than one copy of, or books that we don't think will sell in this library, that are not subjects that we have much market for, we put in boxes to go to an organization called Better World Books, which, if you've ever bought a used book online, it may have come from Better World Books. The amount of money we get from Better World Books is almost non-existent. but
But it's still,
yeah, it's
it's
still
not
money.
nothing and it's not. thrown
Occasionally,
away.
we get old, awful, classic, wonderful books that have been out of print for sometimes as much as 50, 60 years. And those books, usually I will look them up online to see if there's a market for them somewhere. If there's a market for them, if there are copies of it that are being sold for $7,500 or more, then that book gets to go down to Retro Revival, where the owner, Susie, graciously sells our books and only charges us for the postage to mail them. And then the nice books, the good books that pass all of that muster go out on the shelf. And almost every day, somebody has to go through some of the shelves and take some books off that have been hanging around and didn't get sold, and off they go to Better World. But every book, it's really interesting, I think, how much life those books have over and over and over again.
Better World Books is a pretty cool company also. We just applied for a grant through them.
Yeah.
They do a lot of grants for libraries and other organizations, around literacy and whatnot. They do a lot of really good work, and while we don't get a whole lot of money from them per se, we get something, and those books end up going into the hands of other people for a lot less. So they're a really good company. Lots of friends groups use them. It's another good way to have your book live a second life.
They
I will
also,
say, Linda, at least
Yeah.
I'm sure you probably know this too, Tiffany. Sometimes people will donate books because they don't want to throw them in the trash.
Yes.
In the trash. Like,
That-
we've had somebody, I don't know you, but this was a couple years ago, dropped off like 20 boxes of books in front of the Story Garden window
Yes.
on a rainy day.
Yes.
All of them got wet and ruined, and we had to look them all in the trash, obviously. Please don't do that.
Oh,
I know,
But, sometimes people give us, or the friends, their books because they don't want to be the one to throw them out. But if they are moldy or smell
Yeah.
like an animal did something on them, we need to try to get rid of them.
we get a lot,
Otherwise, many people
Yeah.
aren't gonna touch them.
a lot of times,
It costs money and time and.
yeah. No, a lot of times they're grandma's books too, it's,
Sometimes they're really cool. Another factor.
Like a estate, going through estates or houses.
oh, yeah, oh, yeah. And the ones my favorite ones are the ones that come in a box where the books still have the garage sale price on them.
Yeah.
When does the library go through the collection, or is it a process how does that work?
Yeah, so it depends on every library, and it even depends on the staff of those libraries. So when I first got here, our director at the time, Irene, she wanted us to do meeting like once or twice a year, just kind of like go through, do what they read. We don't ever recommend that, because when people see you taking all those books off the shelf at once, it's not a good look. So what we do is generally each selector for each collection, so Philip, our children's librarian, does children's stuff, we've got Karen does TV, and so on and so forth. They will go through their collection on their own schedule. Right now, a lot of their schedules are kind of all over the place, not at the same time. But I will say right now, we've been having a space problem. There are certain collections, like large print specifically I'm thinking of, where every time we add books, we have to take books away.
Yeah,
So that's the biggest issue, is the space issue. We've been trying to get creative with trying to create more space and more shelving, but shelving units cost a ridiculous amount of money, plus just, we don't want to have, every single open space just filled with books everywhere. So everyone's usually on a schedule. I would say every couple months, certain sections are weeded. I know when I did nonfiction, I believe Stephen does this right now. When he sees a certain section of nonfiction, like the 600s getting really crammed, he'll go through the 600s. And in a couple months, when 300s are getting crammed, he'll go through the 300s. So it really just depends. Plus, you know, like
do we
right
have a
after,
subcommittee for this? Is
an
that what you're
election or
talking
something,
about
a
the
lot of
packets and
those
everything? Because I
political
didn't
books
sign
are
up to
not
help, and
popular
I don't
anymore,
want to,
and
but I'm
honestly,
saying,
sometimes
is there
those
specific
ones
people?
literally,
We talked
like,
about
when
having
they're
3
really
people.
popular, they'll get checked out of a bunch,
And
You know, can you
never
clarify that
again.
with Marissa or
And
something?
we've done
'Cause I was-
experiments where we've kept
the
them on the shelf for a year, 2 years,
problem
3 years,
is
not one checked
only
out
2 of us
after they were not
volunteered.
popular. So we make decisions based on
And
that
and
stuff
we
too,
never
but,
actually got together.
we really try to keep
But
our
is there more
collection
packets or?
healthy and
you
Oh,
already-
the packets were
so
in
if
the
there are
library,
items,
back
just like
the
the
information
bookstore
desk.
that
Okay, I'll check it. I'll take care of it.
we also,
We can all
one of
help
the
out.
things that I did say in here, but we are a data-driven meeting library, and so we have something called Blue Cloud Analytics, where we can put in certain filters, and it'll give us all the books that, for example, haven't been checked out in the last 3 years, or since 2022. Or for DVDs, we have a different problem. We have to look up all the DVDs that have been checked out over 100 times. You know, likely the fact that they're not playing anymore because they've been played so much. So we use different filters, different kinds of factors when we're trying to get, or move items onto their next area. We also do those reports for like, let's say, our new nonfiction area, and we want to move them back to regular fiction. And when we notice that we have a ton of books on one subject, but not a different one, we'll try to buy books on this specific topic and then get rid of some over here. And it's not because we don't want to keep everything, we literally do not have the space for it. So we try to keep everything fairly up. But like I said, every library has a different timeline, and even every staff member in this library has their own timeline and does it in a different way. But I'm pretty happy with our collection. Our selectors really care about those collections and try to keep it as healthy as possible, so. Yeah.
Otherwise, you become like one of the professors I had when I was in school, whose office could not be entered except by him. And it was because he was the Bible scholar, and he literally had so many books that the office has had only space for him to walk to his desk and sit down. Yes, we cannot let that
You
happen.
don't want that.
No.
Yeah, so, you know, I tell people a lot of times, we're not a research library. You could do research in here, but we are about buying books for our specific community. You know, buying the popular books that are really up and coming right now, making sure we have a robust, well-rounded collection, whatever that means to every specific person. But we also, as a part of a consortium, rely on those collections as well to fill everything in. And I think together we do a fairly good job.
Yeah.
And if you can't get a book at one of our libraries, that's why we have ILLs. Or you can request one of the libraries to purchase.
That's
Anything
why we
else?
have what?
ILLs, interlibrary loans.
Oh.
So, yeah, if like Link doesn't own a book that you want, we can do an ILL for it, which means our network office will go try to find the book available at some other library, sometimes across the country, and then they'll have it sent here. We do the same thing for those other libraries. We all just kind of share items. And then, you know, if there's a newer item, especially if it's newer, you can go to whatever your home library is and ask them to purchase that item. And we do a lot of patron requests because we want to build, you know, the library that this community wants. So as long as it fits our parameters.
Anything else? If not, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn. Could I hear a motion?
I'll make a motion that we adjourn the meeting.
And is there a second? And all in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed?
No oppositions.
Please turn your microphone